Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are also broadcasting live on Roku. Yes, we are. Roku. I just like that word, Roku. Has a bit of a ring to it. Anyway, better when we're on it. Just kidding. Yeah. Anyway, we're fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee, the one and only, who have been a part of our journey. That's right, since day one. Thank you, Folgers.
Yum, yum.
Also, big thank you to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, a.k.a. Justin Snicker, who's an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, and dark wave electronic music, which can be found anywhere that good music can be found. And he is the voice in music that you hear on that amazing intro that we start off with. So go check him out. Also, Steve McGinnis, the man behind the artwork for The Outer Realm. Big thank you to him. Find him on Instagram and find him on Facebook. Does a lot of amazing pieces and all the horror genre that everybody loves. And of course, does a lot of amazing commission pieces, whether it's horror or not. The guy is just like amazing, does amazing work. Anyway, tonight, we welcome for the very first time Jacob Cooper, and he's going to be discussing all kinds of things, actually, as NDE, his book, Life After Breath, just so much more. It's just so much more involved, and he's just a really delightful young man, and I think you guys are all going to really like what he's got to say. So bubbly. How's it going?
Hey. How are you?
We sure we know.
I'm frustrated with the light. How are you? I look like a ghost. Like I'm so white. I'm olive skin, and when this light hits me, it's like I'm
not
milk.
at all. Not at all.
Milk.
Not at all. Can you be whiter? Seriously.
Yeah, but you have a Scottish background.
White, you know what I mean?
You have a Scottish background. I'm embarrassing Italians all over the world right now.
Not good. Not good.
And my hair's so dark, it just looks like a blob. So like you can't see anything.
It doesn't. It
looks
great.
like a blob today. Thank you.
No, it does.
It's no haircut yet.
Oh, hey.
Pin it on the top day.
Adriana, you get the prize. You're the first one in the chat.
Yes. Hi, Adriana. And you win.
Woohoo! I know. Tamara's probably sleeping again because I fell asleep. I know. But this sounds like it's going to be a really great show. Did you want to give a go?
Yeah, I will read off his bio to you because I couldn't have written it better.
Perfect. We'll start with that.
You have to love it when you get something, when you get a description like this, because you know they're in there and they know their stuff. They know how to get those media bios out.
Absolutely.
Yes. So Jacob Cooper is a best-selling author of Life After Breath, which I love the titles of his books, and The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Is a sought-after speaker on grief, wisdom, and consciousness, offering meditation and mindfulness seminars to help others find purpose and overcome fears of life after death. As a clinical social worker, Reiki Master, and Certified Hypnotherapist specializing in Past Life Regression, Jacobs uses his extensive personal and professional experience to empower one soul at a time. Bring the power.
Bring the power. I love it.
Bring that power.
I love it.
I can't do accents. I get mocked all the time. My accents all sound the same. Hi, Mark Eddie.
Yes.
Hello. Thank you for coming back.
Well, our guest is here. So
Yay.
hit the drum roll. There we go.
Yay. Bring the power. Hi, Jacob. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing, Michelle and Amelia? Just a
Oh,
pleasure
we're
to be on your
fine.
program.
How
It's
are
an honor to
you?
have you. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I know we've been connecting off and on and doing some email tag, and it's just been chaotic. I was sick for like 3 darn weeks. It's like I
Oh,
got
wow.
barely coherent in the middle of a move, still not finished, still
And a
bringing things over
grandbaby.
from the other house like 6 weeks later.
And a
It's like,
grandbaby that always wants to kiss her.
I
Wow.
know.
Even
I
when you're
know.
sick. Yeah.
I am always bragging. I don't get sick except for a 3-year-old. It's like great. I
If there's
can't
a
say
toddler in the
no.
midst, chances are you're going to be sick.
I have been clipped 3 times since January. Okay, it's not been pleasant in my life. So aside from
No.
that little face of his, but anyway, aside from all that, welcome to the outer realm. You finally made it. We're so pleased that you're here, and we're so interested in what you have to say. People seem to be very fascinated with near-death experiences for whatever reason it may be. Probably, I mean, the curiosity of what to expect, what's on the other side, what comes with that whole package. I mean, Amelia's bloody frequent flyer. How many have you had? 4?
But it doesn't count because 3 of them were in one day.
Still counts.
Well, I think it's like that. I'm still trying to figure out if I came in and out of it or if it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's 3. I just remember 3 different experiences.
Right.
And I was under in recovery after surgery. So I still get bits and pieces of it now. And it's 11, 12 years later.
Wow. Some people are cats. They're not human beings. They just have so many lives in one. And it's just like when I go to some of these near-death experience groups, people will come up to me and be like, not did you have an NDE, but they would be like, how many did you have? And I'm just like, one was enough, but power to others who have had more than one. I don't know how people could handle that. That's a lot.
It was every time mine was medically induced. It was a medical issue. It was every time. But I just have a quick question before Michelle gets the ball rolling, because I notice all those beautiful Himalayan salt lamps behind you. Is that bringing you a kind of power? How did you get? Usually, someone, you have one in a room. It's not often.
I love them. I got them
and
everywhere.
It looks so beautiful behind you. I really like it.
I thought you were talking about my Tom Ford fragrances here, which I love.
Yeah, but he doesn't sponsor us, so we'll let that go.
No.
He's too cheap. Okay. Even though we like,
No. I love Himalayan salt lamps. They really create an ambiance. They help out to really ground you. There's negative ions that they emit, which is kind of like the same as earthing in a way, but they also help out with respiratory condition and really purify the room. So I love them. I'm a big believer, though. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence on some of this stuff, but you have to go with your own experience. So I'll pick up a crystal or an essential oil, and I'll just be like, all right, there's all these things that they say about them. What does it mean to me? And to me, it just brings me to great peace and great stillness. And I think when you have an NDE, you're almost homesick for that feeling. So wherever I go, I try to cultivate this ambiance for myself. And, this is my, practice too, where I live as well too. So for my clients as well, it's so important to feel at home because we're all just kind of visitors here on this earth. We want to feel grounded and at home as much as we can.
Yeah. It's funny because they interfere with me reading.
The salt lamps. Yeah. You're not the first person to tell me that. I know someone who was doing them in a salt cave, and you would think like they would hide in everything, but no, they had the adverse effect on them, and it's just
because it wards off negativity, and sometimes you have to reach into negativity to read.
Oh, yes. No,
so people don't realize that. They think everything comes from light, but sometimes, it's a balance. So if you're trying to get an answer, especially on a cold case, a murder case, or a missing child, sometimes you have to step over that fence. And that holds me back in such a way that I gave all of mine away, and I love salt lamps.
I have them all over the house.
They
You don't
make me
have
feel
you,
so good.
I
you
I
don't have
know.
know.
any you don't have any extra to give here or no?
No, 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 I don't need it. I have
No,
them in my I have it in my daughter's room. I have it. I
right.
just don't have it in my working
I
space.
got you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Well, why don't we start from the beginning? Let's start with humble beginnings and how what happened with your NDE, and let's take it from there. Stage is
Why
yours.
why you are the way that you are, right? Um, it's a great segue because I know Amelia was speaking about going into the dark and getting the light, and that's very symbolic of the NDE itself, isn't it? Because what greater darkness do we fear than death itself? I mean, for many, that just death means just the end. But the NDE goes to the end and recognizing there are no ends. It's just a new
Hmm.
rebirth and a new reawakening. But I had my NDE at a very different trajectory that most NDEers have them. A lot of NDEers have them in their adult lives or midlife. For me, I was just 3 years old. I'll repeat that for listeners. I was just 3 years
Wow.
old when I
Wow.
had my NDE. And it does happen, rare, but it does happen for infants and children to
Hmm.
have that, and they're able to have recollection. But I went to, a playground in September of 1993, and I had, a condition called pertussis, otherwise known as whooping cough. Wasn't my parents didn't know, at the time, and so I went into this playground, climbed up on a ladder onto a slide, and I tried to breathe in air, nothing, and then it just everything shut down because I was suffocated.
Oh
And
my
so I
gosh.
lost it was the scariest moment of my life. I don't wanna, because
No, it is
everyone
frightening.
want
My son had it. I had to take him to the
yeah.
hospital for oxygen. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
For infants, children, and rare cases adults, whooping cough could be fatal.
Yeah, he
It's
was
not to
little.
be taken lightly.
Yeah.
So I lost my human breath, there was nothing to hold on to, and it's as if, you're I was in a basement and I shut off power breakers, in a basement of the house, and that was happening to my body. My whole body was just shutting down one step at a time, and then I was able to feel and sense my brain. And in a moment, I just felt my brain literally crack in half. And that's when the spirit realm came in. I heard this incredibly large cracking sound. So I
Hmm.
know there's a saying, my brain cracked open and God or spirit came in. This literally happened to me where I felt my brain, deprived of oxygen and snap in half. And that's when, I had this crossing over experience to a place that I call home. I don't It's called the other side, but that would mean that
That's
it's
hard.
other. It's other.
Yeah.
To me, it's the innermost connectivity to who we are, where we're from, where we're headed to, where we're always connected to, and so this experience was just full blown incredible. I just had awareness of my spirit guides, endless engagements with angels that was in front of me. I was aware of who I was before I was in this body through past lives, aware of my own purpose, why I was here, in this human form, and so much more. So it was, such a double-edged experience. On one hand, it was the scariest moment of my life when I suffocated, but on the other hand, it was euphoric beyond words. And it was a place that was always inside of me and always inside of all of us, that sometimes we have our blinders on and we forget that we are connected to. We come before this body from that place, and we go to after this body to that place. So it was an amazing experience. So hopefully we could delve into a little bit more, but those are some of just the nuggets of it,
Oh, please
of the
feel
NDE.
free. You've got quite a bit of time. So
It's your show.
Yeah.
wherever you want to take it.
Well, I all these things that I saw were from, angles of my soul. A lot of people will ask me, "You were just 3 years old. How could you remember this? How could you understand this?" What I have to say is most 3-year-olds have more awareness than the majority of adults
You're
or,
not wrong.
aged population, because they are less
Mm,
blinded. They don't have their blinders on as much,
that's right.
and they're more open. So their wisdom is a lot higher and awareness is a lot higher. Whereas, hopefully, as we get older, some of the earth wisdom and development increases. So this experience was really happening for my soul, the bodies that we take and the ages that we have are those that we experience, but they're not the full totality of who we are. We just experience genders, ages, cultures, within different bodies and different lifetimes, and they're all a part of learning.
Mm,
Um, but this was something that was always deep inside of myself. It wasn't anything foreign or new. It was just very, comforting. But I do want to preface that in this NDE, I had my own human emotions too, where I was just very traumatized from suffocating. And this NDE gave me a sensation of this timeless reality, where in our world, as Lao Tzu would say, we're used to holding on to the past to create more sadness or bracing for the future to have anxiety. When you have an NDE, you recognize the illusion of linear time as we know it, where there is no time. It's just kind of like trying to divide air. You can't do it even if
right.
you tried. You can't
No,
split up air,
no.
so you're in reality beyond the calendar time. But even beyond that, it's a time that you have an awareness of all was well, is well, and will be well. And that was the most comforting feeling that I had, where there was nothing to worry about. There was nothing, to brace myself for. I
Hmm.
was accepted, understood, not so much for what I was doing, but for my own being. And,
Right.
and being aware of my spirit guides, they were to the right and left side of me, my own guides. And they were my feeling is a sense of embarrassment that I forgot that they were with me this whole time. But when I think of my own guides, it's kind of like if you think of the biggest Hollywood crushes that you have times 1,000, and they are totally invested in your everyday life, just and not necessarily crushes, but people that you just admire and aspire to and see the world in, and they are totally invested in you. And that's kind of the feeling that I got with my guides, where I was one hand, I'm like, why are you invested in me? But the guides and angels don't look down at us, they look up at us and they see
Right.
the real you beyond the you, that we see ourselves.
Right.
But
Your soul, not your physicality.
they your soul, but also not the box that you see yourself in, the ego,
Yeah.
in the box of reality, because who we are, you squeeze us, you squeeze each and every one of us. What's left is a brilliant, eternal, spiritual being at the core. But some of that gets covered over through life experiences or, different patterns throughout life. And the idea is to stay connected where you come from. And I think this life is an allegory of that, where, we could journey in different bodies in different lifetimes, but we can never really leave the home. We want to always stay connected, to that place. Um, but it just reminded me of how much of life is guided. We feel very disconnected many times. We have painful experiences, or we get too human and we think that this is all there is. And this life has an intelligence far greater than our own. And sometimes we just forget that there's an intelligence guiding this life, and everything has a purpose. Nothing is random. And even the most painful experiences that we have, especially, have a rhyme and a reason. And
Mm.
so, what I learned is the power of purpose. How everything has a unique purpose and a meaning. But there's so much to the NDEs. So if you have any specific questions, we could definitely branch off on it. But I know Amelia, you from your own experiences, I'm sure you could relate to this. Yeah.
I can, and I'm curious,
Yeah,
because
sorry,
you.
sorry.
Oh,
Can you
sorry.
lower your mic just a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
having
Yeah, no, it's
issues.
okay.
No,
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
glad you
Michelle,
told me.
NDEers have a lot of issues with technology.
I know. Just when
Tell my
Derek,
husband.
One of the
Tell my
after
husband
effects.
ever
that,
ask her
because
about toaster ovens.
I go
That's
through
good.
2 a year, sometimes
Yeah.
3. Tell him that.
That's
I can't
good.
tell you how many remotes. How
No,
many?
that's,
Is that better?
oh yeah, how much? It just caught me
Okay,
off
good.
guard. It was just like,
It
yeah, okay.
No, it goes by itself. I set it, but then when you touch the soundboard, it bounces on the computer. It's
Right.
not compatible. Sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Yep.
What I was going to ask you, because you were so young, and we've seen films made about heaven is real and God is real. Like, we've
Right.
seen these
Right.
films where these children were extremely young, but not as young as you. 3 is, it's significant, and You had an NDE at 3. I recall my first spirit around that age
Mm,
because I was in a home that we used to go to in the summer. And how could I remember it vividly and in detail? I think NDEers also are like that. They're very detail oriented and everything specific. What I wanted to ask you, because you were at such a young age, mine was later on in life. I mean, there was one as a late teen, but there was one in my 40s. Did you see your loved ones who had passed? How some people say, "Oh, my mom or my, my
Yeah,
grandparent or my
'cause that's
aunt
a
or my
good
uncle."
question because you would barely know your like loved
No,
ones at
that's why
3.
3 years old.
Yeah, yeah,
Chances
yeah.
are your relatives were all living. So it's. I'm
right.
curious.
What I would say is I saw my soul family when I crossed over. And, this is a statement by Shakespeare who talks about, that life is kind of like a stage and we play different roles. But, throughout different lifetimes, we take on these different roles, but we incarnate in this physical realm with our soul family, but we also are connected to a team of a soul family on the other side. I do
Mhm.
think we are all under the umbrella of a collective soul family,
Agreed.
but there's like specific, soul families that are more nuclear and more specific to us. Um, I also connected to a lot of people in past lives that I was, really in my NDE. I got very emotional. I remember just seeing other people that I was connected to in previous lives that I lived as well. So it was a great reunion with all of my team that was there, and it's so hard to describe in words, how, close I felt to all these people and how I forgot about them, and it was just a recollection of them. Um,
Hmm.
but but yes, I was connected to them. There is a story beyond that because I'm my own biggest skeptic. Like in some interviews, I would just say it was impossible for me to be 3. I was 4 or 5, but over the years, my parents and I have conversed about it, and they told me, no, you were 3. Shortly after my NDE, I told my dad that, I said, Dad, something happened when I was rushed from the ambulance to the hospital, and something profound happened to me, and it's not going to make sense to you now, but one day it will. And my dad recently told me that I said that, and, I'll take credit for it, but, there's, when people have NDEs, there's two ways. Either you could really hold on to it and keep it very close to you, or you could shout it from the mountaintops. And for me, this was a very sacred experience that I kept very close to me. I didn't go around telling people, A, because I really didn't have the vernacular, to describe something that's not, to this day, I can't even describe it. But also, I just knew the world around me wouldn't really understand. And so that's really why I kept such a intimate experience close within. That's very common.
I can tell you as a parent, your parents know exactly when that happened to you. A parent, when they experience, like their child experienced that kind of trauma where it's life or death, you never forget what day it is, how old they were, what time it was. You don't forget what you were doing. It's
Right.
your child. So I would trust what they're saying that you were
Oh,
3.
oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
no, no, sure. Yes.
Yeah.
And it certainly was. Um, but it's an experience that never really left me. I tried to kind of fit in school and just kind of push it aside, but the experience was kind of like a beach ball where no matter what I did, it would always come back.
Yeah.
But the after effects were insane because, as I mentioned before, my brain was literally deprived of oxygen, and like I felt like a crack in half. And after that, I was able to have this sliver of light that I connected to filtering through my brain, and I was just connected to the other side, very closely at a very young age. And so this coincides with near death experience research, which will challenge the medical community that the brain does not produce consciousness, but rather it filters it. And so when
Mm.
my brain shut down was when I really had a lot more full, clear thought and awareness, beyond just being in this filter of the brain. So the brain is just a filter of it. And there's so many different, experiences that could voice confidence. For instance, There's a term called terminal lucidity, which, loved ones are, about to cross over, but they are able to have this awareness and experience of their loved ones on the other side. And they have so much clarity and they have this energy, but yet their brainwaves are very low. So if your brainwaves aren't functioning fully highly, why should you have this great awareness? Where does that come from? To this day, medical communities can't explain that. Or if you're on, hallucinogenics, again, brainwaves decrease, but your
Mm,
awareness usually
mm,
amplifies. So how is
yes,
that explained? So
that's interesting.
to this day, there's no explanation with rigid materialism and consciousness of the brain, you know.
Right, right. It's definitely fascinating because the fact that so many people have, similar experiences, but yet so very different. And some people remember, some people have vague
Mm.
memories. What did you find moving forward from there? Like, what was the rest of your childhood and young adulthood like?
Mm.
It was very tumultuous and complicated to some degree.
Right,
I grew up in a lovely family. We all had the same food, the same house. Sure, there's a black sheep, but I was by far the biggest outlier.
right,
And I think because I recognized, I was on this conveyor belt of learning that I needed to be a kid and to kind of fit into society. And I was able to just kind of see through past, this programming that I just wasn't a kid. I was experiencing myself as a kid and I
right.
just wasn't able to look at the world the same way.
And you were aware of this.
Yeah, and so
That's
the
fascinating.
adults that I saw in
Yeah.
my life, at times as kids were physically very small, so we look up to adults and we just see the world of them. But for me, you know, I knew what I had and I saw like the adults around me didn't know what I had, and so in some ways I felt a lot older than the ones who were physically older than me. So it was a very kind of like a weird development where there was a lot of incongruency with who I was and where my body was. I
Right.
was kind of like I awakened this old man within, and yet I was in this 3-year-old body. It was just
Yeah, that doesn't go away.
it was challenging. And sure, there's old
Yeah.
soul stuff like that, and
Sure.
I think that's a part of it. But
I think it's
um,
a little bit past that. That never goes away.
it's amplified. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost that
Um,
feeling of feeling more mature than people who are in the same room with you who are 30 years older. And you're
right.
just like,
Right.
yeah, it's really bizarre. It's not in a condescending way, it's just a strange feeling.
Mm.
Right. And the trauma, the suffocation was difficult. And I think it's why I'm able to remember it so clearly. It was just so traumatic. But the suffocation didn't stop after my NDE because I just felt like I was deprived of the reality that people were living and I couldn't like live in it almost and I couldn't
Mm.
explain myself and it it just felt like a continual period of suffocation with those around me and where I was and I just felt like I was on this earth but not of this earth and it just was a very difficult experience.
It's
Uh,
it's very enlightening, but yet it feels like a cruel joke, at such a young age as well, because you don't give yourself time, or it's almost like, I don't want to be a kid. You wake
It's
up and realize, oh no, I'm back.
it's too
right, right,
heavy. It's just
right,
too heavy for a child, I
Yeah,
think.
right,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
exactly.
But what helped me was radical acceptance, and that's something that
Yeah.
I utilize with my clients to this day. And it's like the situation is what it is. And so what's going to be skillful? What's going to be helpful? I could continue to like push against this, but you're not going to help me. So I was able to find ways to just kind of like accept it and kind of go with it. But when it was meant to like be put up to the surface, was when I was able to really take full bloom. So I think to survive, I needed to push this not totally away from me, but someone in the distance. But to thrive, I needed to make sense of it all and find meaning of it in my life. So that's I think that could be all of our journeys in a way. Like some at some point, we have to really come to who we are and stop running away from it.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm,
but it's hard. The world that we grow up in as kids values regurgitation over imagination and integration. So
that's
you
true.
know, if you're spacing out, you get medicated. Just,
It's
if you're
true.
not totally locked into what's outside of you. So this whole world wants you to be programmed to the outer world. They don't really
Yes.
embrace the inner world,
No,
you
no,
know.
I think they fear
It
that. They don't
it
want
fears
everybody
they
doing
fear
that.
that. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Independent thought is a fear. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're
I'll
right
grab
there.
Alex. Hi, Alex. Alex is asking, do you believe in reincarnation?
So I'm going to say something controversial, which I don't want you to edit today. I don't believe in reincarnation, Alex. I know in reincarnation.
I
To
love
believe
that.
in something, leaves, some degree of not knowing or doubt, to a degree.
Right.
So I think spirituality versus religion, in a way, is spirituality is about the knowing, where I think religion is about hope and faith and
I
belief,
agree.
but
Yeah.
spirituality is really about direct experiences that penetrate our core.
Right.
Um, so regarding reincarnation, I certainly have an awareness of it beyond belief,
Right.
and it's something that I directly experienced not only in my NDE, but subsequently after my NDE, I had different past lives, and now I work as a hypnotherapist, and I work with clients who have past life regressions. So, uh, yeah.
Right.
Did you find that after, okay, well, once you understood what was going on, because I have to keep remembering that you're 3.
Mm,
Right.
Do you
Talk about
find
little
as the,
Jacob.
yeah, because I mean, when I was in my 40s, I was able to see my other lives. Like I don't feel like I need to have a regression. I feel like
mhm,
I can really connect with
mhm,
them. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. But did you feel as you were going on through life
mm.
just a knowing that you had lived somewhere before? And did you have uh, where you'd see something and recognize that I was there, or I
Mhm.
had this moment there, or I had this family there? And did you have experiences like that?
Yes, but they wouldn't come to me when I was just like sitting in a meditation, posture,
No, no,
whatever. They
no.
would come to me just like when I like randomly throughout the day. Like I just remembered at times I was a baseball player and I'd be like on little league mounds with crowds watching me and I would just have the ball in my hand and all of a sudden I just had all these images, of different lives that I lived and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that and I would just be running around and they would just all these different flashing images would come to me. But one in
Awesome.
particular, what I would say about past lives is we have, a countless amounts of them, but some of the past lives that we live have a lot more parallels with the current life that we're living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think part of the issue with regression is, everyone thinks that they were Cleopatra, but the part of the issue is that there were six or
That's a
seven of
big
them.
one.
Part of the
That
issue is that there were
happens.
part of the issue is that there were 6 or 7 of them, and then you just have to say, were you Elizabeth Taylor playing her? Like, which Cleopatra were you? So, yeah, right, right, right.
Do you see
So
Broadway from where you're standing?
right, right, exactly.
Yeah,
I think
that's
what
a tough one.
Alex.
I think
I
they're not
Um,
fully under when they're answering like that.
yeah.
They're
well, no,
not fully
that's
connecting if they're.
right. No, that's their prior, like, thoughts, like, they think, but I think it's a valid experience if if it in many ways, if it has nothing to do with the life that you're living. For instance, during regression, some people have a phenomenon called, I believe, xenoglossy, where they're doing regressions, and I've seen this before, and people talk languages that they have no awareness of in this lifetime, that
Mm-hmm.
have,
It's
their other
fascinating.
languages of other cultures and parts of the world that they lived in.
Yeah.
And how do you explain that? And after when they wake up, they have no idea what happened, and they just kind of write stuff down, and it's like in that language that they live. So
Yeah,
it's wild.
it's really
Uh,
cool. Some would say that's possession, but it's really cool. It depends where you're
it
coming from. But
it's
I
not
agree with you. I
right.
agree with you.
It's not dark or invasive at all, and it
No.
doesn't seem like there's an entity there. It just seems like a very matter of fact of just talking how we are right now,
Well,
but
look
just
at
in
that
another
woman
language.
from Egypt, or that she was from one of the European countries, and was able to fluently read hieroglyphs and speak,
Mm-hmm.
the ancient
Right.
Egyptian language, and she remembered her entire life, and she was
Crazy.
in a
Yeah. Not
relationship
she
with
was
a
crazy. That's
pharaoh, and
crazy.
just
Yeah.
that was like
Right.
what? It's fascinating.
I think it's fascinating, but also it's affirming to the statement that we use a very small percentage of our brains in this life. It's so true because there's, you know, we know what we know, but beyond that, there's a knowing that goes beyond that, and there's an awareness of so many different things. I kind of look at it, you know, it's a term of it. It's called the subconscious mind, but it's, to me, it's like the database in the storehouse of all that has ever happened to us in our lives. Some people call it the akasha, you know, whatever it is.
Akashic records.
There's
Yeah.
many different forms, but it's just we all have this incredible database that has so much more information that we're maybe not aware of at this time. It's insane. So yeah.
Tamara makes a good point.
So pretty much what we were just talking
Tamara
about.
writes, "Hi Tamara. Yeah, Cleopatra we associate the general public with is Cleopatra the seventh. So which number Cleopatra were they?"
I don't,
Just reading it out for her. Yeah.
you'd have to ask my clients who think they're Cleopatra when they come in. They would know better than I would. Yeah.
If you get more than 7, you know there's a problem. But
There's a
Yeah.
problem.
I
indeed.
think everybody, when they have this past life regression, they want that grandeur. There's sometimes there's something. Maybe they worked for her. Maybe they worked with her. Maybe we don't know. And sometimes they could take on that role because at the time they may have been envious of this crazy
Yes.
turmoil life that she
Right.
led. But I
Right.
sometimes I think that because I know many of my past lives, I was not rich and famous, like still not.
Right.
So, but I was always helping children. That was something that just recurring throughout every
And I've been a
lifetime.
healer, yet I know nothing
Yeah.
about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't
Some
know.
things we just carry over, and there's like
That's what they
we
say.
have different socioeconomic experiences and stuff like that. But we always carry that over, you
Yeah.
know, of different energies and gifts. Yes, but sometimes some people will judge mundane lifetimes as being small or insignificant, and they're
Not at
all
all.
significant.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like one's more important than the others. They're all just a part of the soul's lessons and understanding and experiences. But that's our world, right? We look at it from the ego world, and it's like if I don't have power over you, then I'm not powerful, or if I'm not known, then I'm not powerful. But we are all deep down powerful. We all do know each other. The separation is a big illusion. Yeah.
Right.
I just pray that in every lifetime, I hope everyone thinks of this. Just hope that you were good and kind.
Alex.
Right.
Um,
I have
Alex.
I have a joke by Woody Allen who said, "I don't believe in past lives in my other life in this life, and I didn't believe them in my other lifetimes."
That's cute.
I don't believe in
Um,
reincarnation this lifetime, and I certainly didn't believe in my other lifetimes.
That's funny.
Alex, I'm with you. Alex Frontini, he's a good friend. He says, "Can we prevent coming back? I would rather explore the universe than come back."
Yes. Earlier said,
Yeah,
dang,
I
don't
really
wanna come
don't.
back.
If you're gonna send me back, can we skip high school? Just saying,
Yeah.
like
Right.
Well,
seriously,
see,
enough with the
there's
drama.
a theory with this that a lot of people believe. There's a belief that we're so conditioned to go to the light, look at the beautiful things, go down the tunnel, see the light. You meet your loved ones, and it's a whole scenario, right? And there are those who believe that time travelers, for example, or other disembodied spirits are actually people who did not go to the light. They stepped into the darkness to avoid this reincarnating.
Mm,
Not everybody wants to reincarnate, like Alex. They don't want to do it. They don't want to come back and start the whole cycle again. I think they glorify reincarnation. I love it. I love hearing about my lineage, my past lives. I love it. But those people who try to break away from that and not get recycled in, as they call it.
mm. It's a pot. It's possible. I mean, here's what I'll say. I think everything is based off of how we view it.
Right.
The world, we could have terrible experiences and we could view it as a wonderful place, and we could have great experiences and view it as a terrible place. So
Right.
I think so much of it is really looking at life through a higher pathway and seeing it, in a different light. If we're able to do that, we're not allowing ourselves to be defined by the story that we live, but we're defining the story. We're
Mhm.
choosing, a higher pathway to view it. But within lives, we could see it as a burden or as an incredible opportunity to be a greater expression of who we truly are each and every lifetime. And that's a beautiful opportunity and gift. It can be, if
So
you see
this
it
is
that
a
way.
classroom then. We just come here to just keep the key is learning, evolving.
Yeah, well, I think classroom has such a stigma to it, so I
It
try to
does,
stay
but
away
that's what
from
everybody
it.
says. I'm
Because
tired of
Right?
being in
because
school.
I was
because when
like,
we
yeah,
hear
enough.
there's such a bad, we've had so much trauma with that word. So
It's
I I, j- I think it's an experience, it's a journey,
right.
and I at least in some readings, people will say, "Wow, you get bored on the other side, and you constantly come back." Because I think a part of us when we're there, it's beautiful, but we almost crave the opposite of not knowing, and we lose that, and we not know, and we learn how to know. So I, it's beautiful. I don't think heaven is just over there. I think heaven could be found in this
All
life too. It's
encompassing.
it's all connected, but we just have to have
Yeah.
a cosmic mind to see that too in
Yeah.
this life.
Right. When you get this question, Amelia.
Oh, yes. I was just reading it when
Oh.
you said that. Alexa, so would I have to go through regression to find out about past lives, or is there another way?
No, I don't think that's the only way. I think that is a way, but I've had them. I, you're doing great, Alex. I've had them come to me. Sometimes the issue that I find is people try to put too much effort or muscle into increasing their awareness. And I find that, at times when you're not trying to force something or do something, it kind of comes to you. Much as the master comes when the student is ready. Sometimes these transformative awarenesses or experiences come to us when we're least expecting it. So,
Yes.
but we have to be open, we have to be gentle, and I kind of view the spirit realm as just a gentle tap on the shoulder. It's not something that's heavy or forced or so serious. It's very light and gentle.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
I think
Right.
the gentler and more joyous we become, the more we could hear and experience with our awareness.
I agree with you. I also
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of times they come in as what people would think was a dream, but it's not really a dream. I think you're just
Right.
visiting, you're just experiencing it. It's happened to me so many times to the point where I could smell, like if I remember walking just
Mm,
through glens, I just
mm,
assumed somewhere in the mountains of Europe and just, hills, rolling hills of grass. I could smell it. I could feel the wet dew on my feet or the cold stone on my feet. I
right.
could smell the area. It's just strange, like the sea. It's things
It's
like that.
detailed.
And then you start looking into it, or when it keeps happening, and all of a sudden, oh, we're going to give you an extra few minutes, so you get to go further
Right.
into it. I think it's fantastic. It's just we have to know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And dreams are so profound when I wake up from them. Sometimes you just question which is the real dream. Because when you're in it, it feels more real than over here,
It's
you know?
true. How do
Um,
we know it? That's actually a good point. How do we know?
and it just almost kind of reminds me of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz when she
Yeah.
just kind of wakes up. And I think we'll all be like that. But the key is we could be awake while we're awake. We don't have to
Right.
be asleep while we're alive.
Can you
Right.
We want to have that
imagine?
awareness here.
It's
Yeah.
a
After an
total.
NDE, and you were there.
It's
Right, 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 right,
They'd be like, no.
right.
for me, I think it's a sense of longing that you feel afterwards that makes you
Mm,
feel like you've been home and you come back here and you're just like, you're missing everybody over there. You're
Right,
missing maybe the life itself. Everybody
yeah.
thinks back then, oh, well, it's just so primitive. Don't care. There's just obviously something that keeps drawing you there.
right.
I
But
didn't
you,
want to come back
yeah,
in
I
one of
think
them.
I think for a lot of NDEs, you're given two roads. It's either not your time, you have to stay, or you're given
Right.
autonomy. And for me, I was given choice, which is different. Usually, it's not your time, you have to go. But I guess being so young, I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
Um, but it just reminds me that just we have our times here. Everything is specific. We have different exit points in this life, and
Mm,
in our human
Different
mind, we
roles.
we, we don't understand why people leave when they leave.
right.
But I think it's trusting that there's a greater intelligence and a contract, that we're here as spiritual beings having these human experiences
Mm-hmm.
that remind us of this greater intelligence. And, you
Mm,
know, sometimes we override that intelligence with our own judgments, and that's when we could get in trouble.
I
Sometimes we think that we know better than, what's the universe says.
My mom, I've talked about this before on air, so I'll keep it really brief. But my mom told me I had to go back. She was the
Wow.
one who said, no, it's you have to go back.
Mm,
And I didn't want to come back, but when I look back, because of course hindsight is 2020,
mm,
that was before I started working missing children.
mm,
So I always believe that
Whereas
there's
you
a
had a
reason for
purpose.
everything, and there's a
Yeah, you had a
purpose, and
purpose.
that
Yeah.
is my purpose. And if
mm,
I didn't come back,
mm,
I'm
Mhm.
not saying my ego's not saying I'm the only one who could have found them. There was
mm.
teams,
No,
but
but the
I'm just
fact is
wondering
that
that,
was supposed to be your path, and you have to come
yeah,
back and fulfill
that's how I
that
feel.
path. Yeah.
So I hope everyone who has experienced this can look at it, because I fought tooth and nail. Remember, I had 3 experiences in that on that day. I
Hmm,
fought tooth and nail not to come back.
hmm.
I know she kept trying to go back.
I kept trying, yeah,
Right.
and it was a
Sending you
different
back.
experience every time. And then the last one was like the smack on the hand, my mom going, you know. And I have a daughter, and you would think that, but I was so taken in by the feeling of love,
Mm,
I didn't want to turn around.
Mm.
And it did feel like home, like you're breathing. It's love, it's warm, it's all of that.
That's why I find what like what Jacob was saying, because it was home. It's exactly what
Yes,
you said.
right.
It is. It's home.
absolutely. It does feel like
It's where
home.
you
I
come
agree.
from,
I
right?
couldn't imagine as a 3-year-old, though. You know, it's
But
different. My perspective,
right.
I'm an adult when I'm going through this, a child.
Yeah, it was complicated, but here's what I'll say. There's a lot of people who try to find God, and then those who recognize that you find God by embodying God. And what is God? Is the giver of life, you
Mm.
know? And having an NDE, we're reminded of the life that we were given back in the eternity of life. And so there's 2 different types of peoples. There's takers and givers. We could
Mm.
have easily just taken this experience and kept us within, but we recognize that this experience wasn't just about us. It was something that that we were intended to make something from, and to change the world as we know it, to create a ripple effect, and so that's what I do in my NDE, where my life was taken and I suffocated, but then I had this whole new breath of eternity that saved my life. And my goal is just to give that back to others that I encounter when people feel
Mm-hmm.
lifeless, when they feel they're out of breath, literally and metaphorically. You try to just kind of give that back to them, kind of like Aslan from the Chronicles of Narnia, right? People just feel like
Right.
they're stone, and
Right.
I just kind of that's the way God is. It just like infuses life to those who feel lifeless,
Okay.
and
I
we
love
So
could all do
Jacob
that.
because Jacob references pop culture as often as I do. So, like, we're really, is this an NDE thing, or is this just, we're just like,
yeah.
you know, too cool for school kind of thing? But
Mhm.
it's phenomenal. And I believe that you being 3 years old and going through this affected everyone whose life you were in and loved you, and probably changed them, whether it be in small ways, but in greater ways as well, as how fragile life is.
Right, right. And there's 2 ways to engage with death. I mean, we could look at it in a very fearful way, which is understandable,
Mm-hmm.
or we could talk about it. And I think that's why NDEs are so important, is they recognize that through talking about death, it's a form of gradual exposure therapy. In a way, we're able to talk about it, think about it, so we don't fear it as much. But more importantly, it's true that there's an impermanence to this reality, and we could find more meaning by making that actively a part of our awareness. That any
Mm.
given day we could be taken, and so we can engage with
Right.
impermanence with meaning and purpose, and not fear.
So is
Oh,
this
I
why you
love this.
decided to get into doing past life regressions and working with people on a more spiritual level? Because I mean, you have some people who would come back from an experience like this, and I mean, we can get into mental health. We could get into like all kinds of different things here, because some people would, especially I would think at not so much 3. I think
Mm,
maybe even younger, or I mean older, like not adult. I would think that if you had a child who was more aware,
mm,
you know, having lived a little longer, 8, 9, 10, 11, going into the impressional years,
mm,
where your
Mm-hmm.
body's going through changes and puberty and the whole emotional changes that they're going through. Let's just throw that in the mix. And I was 9. Right? I was 9, yeah, and I think that really set precedence for a different path.
Absolutely.
It's a
Yeah.
different experience for sure.
But I think where our greatest pain lies our purpose in many ways. And
Mm,
our biggest struggles is where our purpose is. And I think when you have an NDE, there's a bit of a misunderstanding because the world looks at it from the surface angle. They look at all the euphoric experiences and mystical experiences, and those are all fine and dandy and great. But there's a double-edged sword to it where you
mm,
could feel very alone, you could feel very isolated. Trauma is very prevalent with NDEers. So I my goal is that people, when they hear me, is to not want to have NDEs, rather to remind them that you don't have to die to have awareness. And I
right.
think people are tuning into NDEs now more and more is because there's something that we're saying that resonates with them. There's something that we're saying that reminds them of something that they already know. And that's why people are tuning into this more and more, is becoming more aware. And it's just funny how people look at us as afterlife people, and we're like the monopolization of the ones who holds the keys to the other side. But
Mhm,
we're all afterlife people. No one owns it. We just happen
mm,
to remember it, and our job is to be a gentle tap on other shoulders to remind them of that too when they're
mm,
ready.
right, right. So that's basically you decided to go down this path. And what do you find? What's the most common? Um, like I don't really know how to word it. What's the most common advice, I guess, of people who you have worked with who maybe have had NDEs? The hindrance. What's the common? Are there any complaints with it? I mean, a lot of people
Yeah.
just like, oh God, yeah, it's just euphoric.
Oh, sure, sure. Well, I used to run groups for people who have had NDEs or spiritual transformative experiences. It's unique because I'm also a psychotherapist, but I'm also an experiencer myself. So,
Right.
all right, I'm gonna stop with the pop culture references, but both sides now, Joni Mitchell, not in a love way, but right, right, right.
We're gonna
Uh,
get along really
not
well.
not like not like not a romantic way, but I'm kind of like on both sides now, just
Hmm.
and that's how we learn. We're able to see things from the other's perspective. Knowing what it's like. I find the issue that people have is judgment. I think people compare themselves to other people or compare themselves to others' experiences, and they'll see someone who wrote a New York Times bestseller and think, "Oh my God, that person had the best NDE and mine is irrelevant." And not true. They're all relevant. They're all unique. Not one is better than another one. Um, and so I think that's where people get caught up is they disvalidate their experiences because they, you know, aren't on a big network or, not having, published books, selling millions of copies. And they think that they're inadequate. But, you know, the spirit realm is much different than fame and capitalism. It's not the same. I mean, in our reality, we associate the great spiritual teachers with, those that accrue the most and have the most following, and that's not always the case. We're all
Mm,
unique. We all have something
Yeah.
unique to offer. Um, so
Well,
yeah,
sometimes you can look at it as when they're looking at other people and their experiences, maybe that's their lesson to stop living that way,
right, right.
and find the good in your own life.
Oh, sure.
It's exactly what you just said, but anyway.
Yeah, no, no. And I don't. I know I give off over a lot of recommendations from pop cultures or movies, but I think you know
No, I do
a, lo-
too. So
a
you're
lot
you're
of a
fine.
lot of the producers or creators of these movies come from a creative standpoint, and creativity to me is channeled work.
Hmm.
You're tapping into a higher lesson that needs to be put out to the broad stream public. But one movie that really just moved me was by a Pixar movie called Soul. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but that just
no,
blew
no.
my socks off. I don't want to give away the movie, but the movie basically they consulted with like near death experience researchers, and it's really about NDEs in a way through like a Disney Pixar level,
Hmm.
and they're like accessing the other side and through like this like whole Disney digital Pixar way. But there's
Yeah.
like a part of the movie that speaks of the ego where, we think our life's purpose is to get that big stage and to do that big thing and to have that North Star. And then that's really, we get to that point where like, what's the next thing? It doesn't satisfy our thirst. We just want more. And, so much of life is really understand the little things is the big things really. Is like, being present, seeing that leaf blowing in the air, beyond this, like, being on the train and seeing that conversation of that person, it just, you know, I think people associate the spirit realm with spirituality, but I think life itself and the life that we live and the depths that we experience is where the most spirituality could be found, I believe. You know,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
how present we are, that is how spiritual our lives could be, you know.
Right. Okay. So we've covered this.
Yes.
Okay.
Adriana. Oh,
Oh, you want to get okay? I'm
yeah.
sure. Keep
Some
up.
good question.
Sorry. No, I was waiting for a pause.
Yeah, it's
Adriana.
okay.
Hi, Adriana says, is there anything your parents could have done to help you with this experience? Asking as a parent of a young child.
Well, the issue with me, and the great part is both my parents are fully here and coherent, and so I wrote a book and it was a memoir, and I discussed a lot of what I experienced, and that was the hard part, is that they're still around. So, but I was very fortunate that later in life, they were able to not judge me and fully embrace it, and even when I got older, they were able to tell me things that helped me make more sense of it. So I was very fortunate. But I think as a parent, what's very important is, to not look at your children for who they really are. I think sometimes we look at our kids as just these blank canvases, those that we need to imprint. But I think kids could teach us more than we could teach them in many ways. I think we could get them
Mhm.
acclimated, but kids could teach us so much more. So I think it's really allowing kids to talk and to feel a climate when they're able to process their feelings and not be judged or condemned.
Mm,
And luckily we're at a time where we're recognizing all this stuff as real and we're not pushing it away. But you just wonder like how many John Edwards or Teresa Caputos were institutionalized, at a very young age when they're having these real experiences, and they're just kind of put in the blue room. And
mm,
now we're recognizing the difference of, a sick and psychic in a way, like
mm.
there's mental illness, but some of this stuff is real. It's not all just, schizophrenia or stuff like that, or,
Agreed.
you know,
Yeah, agreed.
I think
Absolutely.
when it's healing, when it's loving, it's usually from a mediumistic, psychic point of view. The other
Mm,
stuff might be more dark, and that's, more of the schizophrenic kind of side. So I think it's now more than ever, I think people are able to differentiate the two. Um,
mm. Right.
It's a different world we live in.
Do we have
it's
another?
it's very it's evolved so quickly we don't recognize it. It's kind of
Mm,
like being on a plane. We're going 500 miles an hour, not recognizing how fast we're going year in and year out, and how much things are changing so rapidly. You know.
right. Right. Let me put up another comment. It's a long one.
Okay. Hi, Faye Ewing Garza. Hello. She's listening in from Latino Psychic Visions. Husband Roger Garza Sr. had a near-death experience, returning with his gift of seeing the past, current, and future, and connects to the other side. I, as his wife, not me, her, have seen Roger go through many experiences. His experience as an NDE is very real. He felt all the love from the other side and is committed to helping people connect with loved ones who have passed. I believe that a lot of people who've had NDEs come back with tremendous gifts and work as mediums and very
Mm.
good ones.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
People who
absolutely.
have never even been interested in anything psychic or paranormal come back with a huge strength.
Uh, Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of, not most, but a lot of mediums that I talked to had NDEs themselves,
Hmm.
including a very good friend of mine who I just spoke to, who had his NDE as a child. And he's like a world-renowned medium, but his name is Mark Anthony, not Jennifer Lopez Mark Anthony, but Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, and he had his NDE at a very young age as well. So it just opens something inside of us that's always there. And we allow ourselves to integrate into the human experience.
Yeah, because a lot of people think, oh, mediumship, psychic, it runs through generation upon generation. You can't have that gift any other way, and that's not true.
Mhm.
That's not
No.
true. Yes, there's strength, but I mean, it runs through my family, and not everybody is psychic or medium.
Mhm.
So, it's I see it a lot with NDEs. I can't stress that enough. People come back and they don't understand what is going on. One medium who was on television quite often, I've had the pleasure of working with him before, said that when he woke up from an accident, literally falling down a flight of stairs that put him in the hospital for a long time,
Hmm.
that it was like waking up, and this will give away where he's from, Shea Stadium, and all the noise was just crazy.
Mm.
And the way he gets his readings is he literally has to meditate and records himself speaking. He's not even aware of it.
Wow.
So yeah, a lot of people, they work differently. That's all that it is,
Wow. He's from
but-
my neck of the woods. Yeah.
yeah.
Shea Stadium. I haven't heard that in a while, but
Yeah, I know, right? Well,
there's a lot of New York psychics, though. From Queens and Long Island. It's something in the water here. We just have a lot of. You look at any library, like half of them are from Long Island. In the metaphysical
he was
section. Yeah.
much older, and don't get pissed off if you're listening. He was much older in life when it happened. So you would never imagine that this person, because he doesn't do this anymore, so that's why I don't want to say name.
No.
You would
yeah.
never imagine that this is something that you'd be going through in your late 40s or early 50s. That's not something, you think of. And then boom, all of a sudden,
Right.
it's like, what the heck is going on?
I mean, I know like incredible reputable mediums who just one day literally woke up and this gift just unfolded. It was just like they had a lobster shell that had, and they just kind of shed that off, and they had this new awareness that just happened. It was just a shift of consciousness, in the middle of the night. It's like something from a movie, and they never had. I think they did, but maybe they just didn't like realize it, and it just exploded. So
Right.
not just NDEs, but just I think when it's ready, this streamline of awareness will come to you. It's always in us,
It's like
but
an awakening, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be. Some people have to meditate to get there. Some people,
Right.
it happens through different ways, and
Right.
you just find yourself shifting, and you
Mm.
keep shifting.
That's
Yeah.
a good word. It's the shift. Yeah.
The shift.
If,
Yeah.
if you're born with that gift and you go
Mhm.
through an NDE, speaking from experience, it's like they're, hitting that shoulder, knock, knock, knock. Wake up. We got work
Right,
to do.
right,
Like
right,
you
right,
can't
right.
keep ignoring this. You need
Yep.
to work.
Right.
Oh,
But
yeah.
anyways,
Right.
I've asked other people. I always ask people when they say that they've gone through it, like, what was it like for you? And
Mhm.
I know that they were gifted before and working as mediums or whatever. And I always ignored it and put it aside. So for me, it was a big slap in the face. It was like, get up. But yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you basically decided to write your first book.
Yes.
I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring it up on the screen for people. That's what I've been doing while you guys were talking. Was just getting a book. So here
You
we
don't have to
go.
call Mark Anthony with J-Lo anymore. He hasn't had J-Lo in like a few wives.
No, but we associate
I'm
that,
just
right?
teasing you.
No,
I'm
no.
teasing you.
I'm a little bit slow with my references there, but yeah, this is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, who endorsed both of my books, Life After
Oh,
Breath and the
nice.
Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. And as you see, we have Dr. Ray Moody here on the front endorsement, who I'm friendly with, but
yes.
we can't be talking about NDEs without mentioning him because he coined the term,
Right.
in the 70s. And, I think if you speak to most near-death experiencers, they'll tell you near-death experience has the term death, but it has nothing to do with death, because when you have an NDE, you recognize the illusion of death, that there is really no death. There's death of the body, but not of the soul.
Right.
No.
And so I almost say, in my mind, like I give the world of respect to Dr. Moody, but in my mind, I view it as an eternal life experience or an ELE. Like you
Right.
just remember eternal life. You remember we can't die, So yeah,
Right.
Life After Breath in many ways is a homage to Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life. Um, but it had to do, I mean, for me, that I suffocated, and there was life after that. There's life within the breath, and there's life after it. But I
Right.
think breath is life, and I released it like right during the time of the pandemic, where so many were having a literal near-death experience. But I think the globe itself was having a near-death
Yes.
experience,
Yeah.
in a sense that the world that they knew was just yanked from them, and they were just kind of forced to live their lives differently and to surrender to a different transformation.
Hmm.
So literally, metaphorically, people's, breaths were taken, and so how do you work with that? And so I use my NDE as a model for that in many ways, and the near-death experience as a model for that. And I think it's really surrendering past our pain to a greater breath and a greater consciousness within. And
Right.
that darkness, when it comes in, we're able to really see that darkness and see the light, through it.
Hmm.
You know,
Right. Right. All right. And we're going to go. Hold on. I'm going to get rid of this one. Go to the next one.
I love the title.
life after breath. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
love it.
it's 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 really a homage to Dr. Raymond Moody, and
It's
um,
perfect.
I think you know th- a lot of NDEs will talk about NDEs and not mention him, and
Mm.
I don't think we would be here without him in many ways. We
And
would be,
this is
you know, it,
genius, Jacob. This is
Very true.
genius.
the wisdom. Well, I'll tell you a story about the wisdom of Jacob's ladder.
Yes.
I I my grandmother passed away like right around Memorial Day last year,
Oh, I'm
Oops.
but right
sorry.
when she
Sorry,
lived a
it's a
full
bit of a
life,
blurry
but
one. I'm trying to clean it up. It's not
no,
working with me.
it's well, if people can't see, I have it right here.
Awesome. Okay. Let's
Perfect.
just
That's
The
probably
lose
a
this
better
wisdom
view.
one.
of
Let's
Jacob's
lose this
ladder.
one. Okay, good.
Um,
Perfect.
but my grandmother, she would have life after breath by her, and that was like her greatest pride. But I told her I was working on a second book, and I told her the name of it, and she just says Jacob's bladder, and I go, Mom, no, no, it's Jacob's ladder, not Jacob's bladder. She just always had a sense of humor, but really, there's so much in a name, and my name is Jacob, and familiar with Jacob from Genesis. Jacob was fleeing his brother Esau, after the covenant, and he was running for his life, and he just had this dream when he slept in this place that's called Beit El, or what's translated as the house of God in Israel. And he
Mhm.
saw the angels just going up and down the ladder, when death was almost in front of him. And then obviously he wrestled, the angel of death, and he became Israel. So, but there's a lot in a name, and I had mine literally going up on a ladder onto a slide, and similar to
Right.
Jacob, like
Right. So
death
you
was
have
right
these
in
little
front of me,
metaphors
and
in
then
there. Yeah.
but God works in a very humorous and symbolic way. Um, that
Mm.
and so that's really what the title was about, was the different rungs of the ladder of bringing the hereafter to the here now, and how each and every lifetime and how we evolve our consciousness could really allow that, ourselves to really elevate throughout different
Mhm.
lifetimes, and we're bringing that cosmic mind into this reality. So that the whole goal for people to pick up the wisdom of Jacob's ladder is to not wait till they die to have that awareness, or to not need a self-induced near-death experience to have awareness of the other side, but that they too could experience that in this reality. And I have different chapters, which are those different rungs of the hereafter to the here now. So yeah,
Right.
no, I'm probably not the guy who was supposed to write these books, because you know, on paper, I started off like in community college at a remedial level in writing and reading. And it wasn't until I had an aunt who became my spiritual mentor, that saved me. My aunt was actually the teacher of Jose Feliciano, who wrote the song Feliz Navidad. She was a teacher for the visually impaired, but she lived that life literally, where she helped those who couldn't see from a spiritual vantage point to see. And so she helped me remember who I was and what was inside of me. And, I gave her like a piece of my writing, which I thought was like crap or wasn't good. And she saw, wow, you're an amazing writer. And I was like, you're kidding me. And so from that belief that all of a sudden I saw myself as a crappy writer to an amazing writer changed the story of my life. So we could walk around seeing ourselves in such a small way. And from that power of belief, we'll live our lives accordingly. or we could see ourselves as unlimited, and we could live a life in what we do as unlimited. So there's so much power in the biology of belief, as Bruce Lipton says, but in the power of belief that we have in within our lives.
Right.
So no
Uh,
weird question, Alex. Yeah.
This is a champion.
Alex has his own show, and I have a feeling Alex and Steve are going to be booking you soon. You should save some of those for your episode, Alex. I'm just teasing. We're
Yeah.
good friends. We're good friends. Alex asks, here's a weird question. When reincarnating, is it always in the future? Or can we reincarnate in the past? That's a great
Good
question, Alex.
question.
Should have saved it for yours, but thank you.
It's a great question. Well, first of all, I have to preface, Alex, it's about 10:20 at night. So questions like that are great, but for the left, for our minds, it can make them explode. And why I say that is we will be able to understand consciousness at the level and vantage point of what we're looking at it. So if we're looking at, life through the linear mind, we can't understand this stuff in a way. We
Mm.
have to really look at it through this timeless mind. And so the term is past lives that we say, but there is no time really, so it's just, I view it as almost kind of parallel lifetimes, but there's no, in this lifetime, there's past,
Yeah.
present, future, but on the other side,
Yeah.
there is no time. But I
Right.
think to avoid our minds exploding, we use that because that's the kind of time that we go by, and that will make things like sensible. Like if it was all happening at one time, we wouldn't be able to function. So we almost have to have that to be able to live in this human reality in a way. But we could
Mm.
also understand the illusion, um, and that's helpful because when we're going through something painful, it could often feel like that's permanent. And I found that pain has a shelf life, but love in eternity does not. And so I
Mm.
think what's important for people is to, engage differently with pain, to recognize that it has a shelf life, that it's temporary, that all things of this world are really temporary, even the most painful ones. But the only thing that lasts is the impact that we have, the love that we share, the love that we experience, and the relationships that we formulate. The rest just, comes and goes. Sure, we could carry over some degree of trauma, which we heal, but reality, at the end of the day, all that's left is the essence,
Right. Right. I like that answer. But I like the whole, the perception of the illusion of this life. What's your thought on dimensions? Dimensional lives, different layers living
Yeah.
simultaneously.
I mean, I know a lot of my colleagues talked about the fourth, sixth, fifth, seventh, eighth, ninth, tenth,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
I I I I believe in it, but my primary focus is right
Mo-
here,
Like
right now.
multiverses. Yeah.
I believe it.
But
But
maybe
my
Jacob in another,
right.
dimension. So it's
I
entirely different.
Mm.
I really I mean my primary focus is mindfulness. It's just like really being in this body in this lifetime. At
Right.
times, I think we need to just allow ourselves to venture into those things, and we could use a recharge, by
Right.
going onto the astral plane, but I think everything's in balance. At times we go
Right.
to bed or we want to have those transcendental meditations. I think that's great,
Right.
but it should all allow us to be here in this body. Because if we were meant to be there, we would, but I think we're meant to be here in this body and to cultivate that cosmic mind in this body. I think that's important. So early on, I was very into like, going there,
Right.
but as I get older, I really try to like cultivate all this, in this body as much as I can.
Yes.
And it's hard, that's the challenge, but that's what I try to do.
Right. Well, because we're in a constant state of evolution.
Mm.
And sometimes that pulls us in different directions. And I think
Mhm,
when you've been given a glimpse, of home or the other
mhm.
side or whatever people want to call it, I think that sort of gives you that edge a little bit, you know. Oh, Alex,
Telling
It
you, they're
can,
coming for you,
there
Jacob.
is.
it can, it can, but I know you had my friend who actually referred me to you. You've had Peter Panago on, right?
Yeah, Peter's
Yeah.
awesome.
Panagore. I like to
Panagore.
Italianize the Greek name.
Yeah, no,
We
Peter's got
love Peter.
he's got
We
a
love
strong
Peter.
Greek background, but he's a good friend and colleague of mine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
But
awesome.
he's a
Love
great
him.
guy.
why I bring up Peter is he spoke about how death was just the beginning. That's so true. When his NDE, it kind of taught him like that was just the beginning of the awareness. In other words, it didn't have a full monopolization of it. We just kind of touched on the precipice of this, and there was just
Right.
so much more. To me, death is like an ending where we just see, okay, this is it. This is all that there
Right.
is, and we're talking about the infinite. You can't chop up air. You can't chop up the infinite. So
Right.
I think each and every day that we live is another way to expand that box of reality as we know it, to constantly expand, and we
Right.
can do that through constant curiosity, constant exploration. There's no there's no like failure or success, or wins or loss. It's just different ways of seeing it, and it's all a part of the journey. You know,
Right. Right. I agree. It's just I guess it depends on how curious
right?
people are. I'm one of those people I research, but I have to know everything. I admit it. I have to know
Right.
absolutely everything. And
Right.
sometimes you start researching one thing and then it takes you into
Mm.
something entirely different. But
Right.
yet it just all seems to make sense.
Oh, sure.
You know, like
Absolutely.
I don't know. I like the whole multiverse thing. I like the whole dimensional thing, and
I
it's
I think
just
that's great. Yeah.
well, our producer is the one that sort of like gave me a kick in the rump with that because speaking paranormally, people will say, "Oh, well, we'll talk about ghosts,"
Hmm.
and he would always sit there and razz us and say, "It's a dimensional bleed through." I'm like, suppose. I suppose it could be,
Right.
but it just ruined it. but in the same
It,
respect, took us into a different, direction altogether.
Night
Oh,
night.
no more
Dream of
questions.
burritos. Night night.
Burritos. Well, there's no such
Burritos.
thing burritos.
Send you to bed hungry.
I
Would
love
you
burritos.
finish
Oh my
that
lord.
burrito before talking
Oh,
else?
these two, the burritos. Yes,
The three of us, yeah. Bad.
definitely not me.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Chanel M. Fletcher. She wrote, I sense fear of dying. I'm hoping I'm reading this right.
yeah,
I don't want to die, but it's not something I fear anymore.
Hmm.
Oh,
right.
That's
But this is good that you don't
death is
fear it.
like a trip to another world. Yes, it's
Yeah, because
transition.
she's had NDEs also, so she
wow.
doesn't fear it anymore. So I guess that's a really big benefit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Here, I love this comment. Death is like a trip to another world.
I
Yeah.
read that.
I
Yeah.
it's I think once we touch our souls, whether that be through an NDE or through meditation, but we really touch our souls, we recognize, you know, the soul is beyond the body. And so I recommend a lot of people just getting into meditation because when you really are deeply into meditation, you know that there's a you beyond the thinker, there's a you beyond this world, there's a you beyond this time, and you're able to touch into something that you just know will continue, and that's you.
Right, right,
And I think when people identify themselves with their bodies, they'll have a hard time believing themselves going on because that's all that they see themselves as. But I
right,
think if you're able to see yourself as a soul, you'll understand that it's possible for yourself to continue beyond the body. The issue, though, that people have is this box of death that people have. If you're viewing it that people hang out 6 feet under the ground, it becomes a very morbid, difficult, fear that people have. But my question is, if you could hang out anywhere, why would you hang out 6 feet under the ground? It's like,
oh,
that means that there's a part of
absolutely.
you that's still there. Why would you hang out, in this underground? I mean, you can, I guess, technically, but why there? That'd be quite boring, I
Or on
suppose.
someone's
Right.
fireplace mantle.
I
Right.
have to intervene because we do need to do a sponsor and
The money
station
shot.
ID.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
That's the money shot, right?
The Folgers in your cup. Yeah.
That's right. See, you could do a commercial.
I,
Michelle
I,
explained that
I
as,
need some Folgers right now. It's 10:30. I mean,
oh my gosh, it's so early.
yeah.
We're night owls.
Oh
Oh
my
my
God.
gosh. Okay, so you are listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, coming to you live from the gorgeous city of New Orleans on 105.3 and 107.7 FM. We are also live on Roku and streaming on Roku. So if you've got Roku, make sure you go and check us out. Tonight we have Jacob Cooper with us, and we are discussing his book, Life After Breath, all about NDEs, his experience, and believe it or not, as 3-year-old child. If you're just tuning in right now, don't worry about it, because you can start this from the beginning or any of our shows by streaming or listening to our archives on any platform you normally use. A shout out and a thank you, huge thanks to the amazing people at Folgers Coffee for fully sponsoring our show and continuing to sponsor us. We both love you so much and we thank you. A shout out and a huge thank you for our intro and outro to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, Justin Snicker, award-winning composer and musician. You can find his music on Amazon and Bandcamp, and you can find him on Facebook and Instagram. And speaking of that, our regulars know where I go from here. Please, if you're listening to us on Facebook or YouTube, give us a like, hit subscribe, and share. Comment and share. Michelle has it going on the screen if you're just tuning in.
Got to say, smash
I'm
that like
laughing
button.
because Tamara's got the coffee cups across, but you forgot to say share. It's a good thing Michelle put it on the screen. You're our third host. Come on.
I did have them up. I had them up.
Yeah.
Gosh.
But thank you all for tuning in and joining our chat. And like I said, if you're just tuning in right now, give it a few minutes and start from the top. You don't want to miss anything. Hi, Ray.
And the
and share.
archives
Thank
go
you,
up
Tamara.
really quick too. So
Yes.
they'll be up really quick after the show. If you want to start completely over, usually within about 15 minutes.
Yeah, share the link for the show with people that you know, or friends and family that you know. I'm selling it. I'm just telling you.
So, there we go.
Regarding the Folgers, though, there could be like a spiritual twist to the best part of waking up. It's like recognizing that we don't die.
You should do a
can
commercial.
that.
Right.
And no,
It's
you
just like
can, and then you can promote your book.
That's
Yeah.
right. We always
That's what
tell
you do.
people to
recognizing we don't die. That's a part of waking up.
I
Yeah.
harp about this. Do a 30-second commercial, promote yourself, but
Right.
Folgers somehow has to be in the mix. We
Yeah.
play them on the show when they come in, and they sit in archives forever for hundreds of thousands or millions of people to see them.
Yeah.
And of course, show nights, we have millions of people
Oh.
who see them. And we've had a lot of people get pretty creative, but it's always there. And Folgers actually does watch the show.
Wow.
Hey, Folgers,
Wow.
that's why we say thank you, because they are
Yeah,
watching.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
if you do this, just remember that you have to audio and visual
It
with
has
the
to be
Folgers,
MP4.
whether
Yeah,
it's the
MP4, yeah.
coffee in your
That's
hands.
it. We
We
wanna
have
see
the
the
mug, but
Folgers. I
yeah.
know.
Reach out to me, Folgers. I'm your spokesguy here. Come on.
Yeah,
There
we're
we
already
go.
there. Excuse me.
Yes.
But you can do the commercial for our show
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
and promote
Exactly.
your book
Yeah.
They do.
all about NDEs and awakening. See,
They do.
Yeah.
watch
it's
it,
a
they get
win-win.
kick out of
Absolutely.
them, and just an idea. Just send it over.
Yeah.
So, what next, Jacob? What is next for you?
It's a good question, Michelle. For now, my book, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is like my real, focus. I think the impetus for me to write a book was just a way to give back to all the books that helped me in those dark moments. And, I think in a way it's when I saw those books on bookshelves when I was younger, I was be like, I want to live there for eternity one day. I want to be on that bookshelf and to give back what I was given. So, you know, really it's but my focus now is on, this current book, but just on reaching as many souls as possible with this message. I found that, this message, the meaning of this message is for me to like release it as much as I can. If I hold on to
Mm,
it, I'm not really living, but if I'm letting go of this message, I'm fully living.
right.
And I think our world, we stigmatize letting go as giving up or surrendering. But really, surrendering is is where we could grow the most. It's where we could expand and evolve the most. And for me, I'm just allowing myself to go with the flow of this message and allowing it to take me where it wants to. I mean, I've had people from the UK contact me to want me to go there and different parts of the world. So
That's fantastic.
um, I'm open myself to infinite possibilities, but when you come from a place of service, you just know you will flow where you're meant to go.
Mhm.
The key is just to not
Yes.
get the ego in the way.
Yes.
When
No,
you
yeah,
think like, "Oh my god, I'm so
exactly.
great," stuff like that, it's
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
much to do with me, but just, using this
Yeah.
as a channel to make the world a better place. That's what it's about.
I
So,
love that. I love that because you put it eloquently when you're in service. Service to others. That's what it's about. It is about servitude in one form or another.
mhm,
I think when you come back, whether you're born with this gift, whether you develop it, whether you come back with it, um, I think it's there for a reason, and I think you need to pay it forward. You need to
mm,
leave your mark. You need to leave the world a better place than how
mhm,
you found it because you were a part of it.
mhm.
You know,
Right, right. I think the issue that a lot of people have though is, and if you look at like hospice studies, like a big um, regret that people have when they're about to go is that they lived a life that someone else wanted them to live, that they were someone else's version of who they were, or they had fear of doing what they really wanted to do due to what other people thought. And
right?
um, I think each person has a tune in the universe. They have a song inside themselves, but they have to play that song. They have to really tap into that song. So much of what people are singing are just the mere surface of who they are, what's inside of them. And I think the
Right.
more you connect, the deeper that song will come in. The more that voice isn't just going to emanate from your thoughts or your brain, but really from the heart. And that is my middle name actually in Hebrew is heart is
Oh,
but really, and so I think when people are more connected, they'll be able to really tap into that deep inner voice and they could sing their song. And as long as you're singing your song, you can never really die. And the song that you sing, others will sing after you. They'll continue it and it'll be a beautiful symphony. And there's a ripple effect from
mhm,
all the songs that we sing within the life, and each person has their own unique note. I think the issue is we look at someone else's box and we think, oh, their box is better than mine. But
mhm.
when with everyone's box, they have their song to sing, and no box is better than others. You just have your song to sing, and that's what
Right.
people have to focus on. It's not what someone's going to think of my voice or what I do in this life, but you
Mhm,
know, just your box. You got to figure out who am I, what am I about, why am I here, what's my message, what's my essence, and
mhm.
sing it loud and proud. That's it. You know.
Right, right. So how, does your experience or other transformative experiences provide guidance or insight into today's world, so to speak, this
Well,
day and age?
kind of like Amelia, I had an NDE, but later in life, I've had not an NDE like Amelia. I know Amelia's had a couple of them, but I had another out of body experience, later in my
Yes,
life
that's cool
that I
too.
that I
Mhm.
speak of in Life After Breath, my first book.
Yeah,
It's one thing like I could say, oh my God, I had this NDE, but I was 3 years old. I could just push it away. But then, later in life as a young adult, I had this crazy, profound out of body experience, but
right.
this OBE lasted several weeks, and I was just hovering over my body, and I just became aware of so much more energetically that I was connected to that I just might have just blocked myself over. But the big thing that I remember from my OBE was the interconnectedness that I saw of all things, and I was able to see it literally with my mind's eye.
Right.
But I think the issue, though, is people are so blocked off from the oneness that they're a part of, and they just are just egocentrically connected to themselves and very separate. And I think the issue with oneness is people sometimes think that it's sameness, and it's not. We each have something individually to offer differently,
Right.
but the individual and collective are connected. But oneness speaks to my NDE because my NDE happened in a playground and I was just a young child. So we're all children's in God's playgrounds here to play as our brothers and sisters keepers, to
Very
be
symbolic.
here to
Yeah.
is so much symbology in this,
Yeah,
thing. It's crazy.
I know.
But I think, oneness isn't just chanting and feeling it, but actually living it and seeing another situation as not other, but rather an action to calling and something that we're a
Mm,
part of. And that's my hope that the last couple of years that we live, with this whole situation is that we didn't
Mm,
other a
yeah.
situation, that someone in Australia wasn't just pushed away, but rather it's just like, all right, this is a part of my foot. It's a part of the whole human body, and we have to address it because we can only make this through this life together. We can't make it fragmented. The me has to be in the we, for this to work.
Right. I agree. I agree. You get a lot of people out there who talk the talk, I suppose. They don't
Right.
walk the walk, and
Mm,
that seems to be really big. But I do love that people are actually waking up on different levels. I think it's
mm,
important. I think what we all went through over the last couple of years
mm.
um, has created a lot of division, but it has also created a lot of unity.
Right.
People have had a lot of time to reflect and go, wow, because life doesn't allow you to slow down. I think we've talked about this, a few times on this show. You're always so busy. And if it showed anything, people had time to be still for a
Mm,
little while and had to
right.
go to the outdoors and do things with each other and their families. It's like,
Right.
"God, this is so nice." You're like, you go out and like, I was in Niagara Falls and I'm just like, I'm looking across. There's always people in front of you. You can't see across to the other side.
Mm,
And I'm just like, are those caves? All this,
right.
I had no idea what was on the other side
Right.
looking out because it's just, I've never been able to drive by and see it.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Different
And
experiences, solitude.
I view it as shake-up experiences because sometimes we get very plateaued in this human experience and stagnant. And sometimes we have to have the floor under us kind of shake a little bit, whether that be through an NDE or just this global
Yeah,
phenomenon. And
right.
all of a sudden, we're forever changed in a good way. But I
Mm,
think so much of it was it was like the same storm, but everyone had a unique boat. But also with these strong winds, a lot of it too is based off of foundations. If
oh,
people were
yeah,
very
yeah.
connected, they can engage with this to find meaning and purpose in a way eventually. But and people weren't connected, they would just see it as bleak and full of pain, and they just would just see darkness and nothing past it. And it's not to judge or condemn. Everyone had a unique circumstance and
Mhm,
trauma and all that stuff. But
mhm.
I think foundation speaks to a lot of how people were able to transform that we all that we
Yeah,
went through in these last couple of years.
absolutely. Which brings me to this question. When you're dealing with people who want to go through whether, a regression or talk about their NDEs,
Mm,
people trying to cope, how do you get them through the trauma of that? Or how do you get them to cope with what's happened to them? Like I said, not everybody can come back with something like that easily. You have
right.
those who don't want to come back, and then you have those who just want to understand more and they can't because you're here spinning your wheels. It happened
Mm,
to you young enough that it was almost like second nature. What
mm,
about the adults who are it's like, God, I've been here this long and I've been here, and like Amelia's experiences, I've seen this, I didn't want to come back. I'm just,
mm.
how do you deal with people like that? What's your advice to them?
Well, I mean, some of the most productive sessions that I've had in my life was when clients were just talking and I didn't say a word, and they said, "Jacob, oh my God, that was the best session I've ever had."
Right.
So sometimes less me is better me, but
Right.
I think a lot of people they want to be validated and heard.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will hold on to so much pain and they felt they feel like no one wants to hear them. And so I think first is being able to meet people where they're at. I think that's a big one. Certainly as
Mm,
a clinical social worker, that's like the biggest tenet that we're taught is everyone's on different levels. Where
Mhm.
you are, you have to sometimes leave that place and allow yourselves to be in that person's shoes.
right.
And to me, that's a very divine act, but that's also very Buddhisty. I
Yeah.
think my job is to
Buddhisty.
Yeah.
I
I
love
think I
that.
think my job is just to be like a paid monk as a therapist, where I
Right.
sit with mindfulness, compassion, openness, curiosity, and it's just I just view myself as a monk in a way, where I just
Right.
their world and I'm entering it. But eventually, when people are able to For instance, I'll give you something like grief, right? Grief has the part of it that's very painful, and people go through the stages. And it's a roller coaster, and those stages are very much interchangeable. But I think the only way out is through when it
Mm,
comes to grief. Through going through the human part, on the other side of it can be love, meaning, transformation. But I think our society doesn't set people up for that. Our society says you have to just move past that, surpass what you're going through. Don't be with what you're going through. Just expedite it. And that's when people get into trouble. So I think people have to allow themselves. I always say two things could be true at the same time. You could have all this awareness, but you could also have the human part, which has the real, raw human emotions. And I think we have to allow ourselves to have two things coexisting at the same time and allow
mm,
that to be. You
Hmm.
right.
know,
I totally resonate with that.
two
Yeah.
things could be true at the same time. You could be
Yeah.
hurting, but also be aware too.
Right.
Doesn't have to
Well,
be one or the other.
I think you're also like you nailed it. You're the person who listens.
Mm,
Maybe I know there are people out there who don't feel like they have anybody. Like, well, I can't tell this story. Nobody's going to believe me. I feel foolish. Did it even happen?
mm,
I think health practitioners are a little bit more open now. They've gone to the degree of some, some ORs will actually have little signs that they have, pointing up, and they study it. And people will, when they leave the body and they come back and they'll say, well, I left the body. And because they died, they'll say, oh, did you see anything specific? And they're like, yeah, I saw something up top. They'll either put a date or they'll
mm,
put a little message.
right.
And so when the person relays the message or the date, whatever was flashing across, much like what you're seeing right down
Mm.
here, then to be like, yeah, okay, so you really did. So at least there's that, because for a long time that wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
Oh no, research is really getting very strong for this. I mean, and some of these things you wouldn't be able to do even if you were fully awake. Like I have heard of people who've had NDEs who knew the exact conversations that the doctors were having, and they were just
Right.
pretty much flatline, had no consciousness. Or some people just saw, like one woman saw like a tennis shoe on top of the roof of the hospital. Like unless you're flying a droid
Right.
while unless you're flying like what's the thing like the droids? What not the droid, but geez, you know what I'm talking about? Those electric things that have
The
cameras
drones.
on them. The drones,
Drones.
The
yeah.
drones, yeah.
Unless you're active,
Drones, close.
unless you're actively flying a drone while you're flatlined on the table, like how would you know that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Exactly.
sometimes people have reactions when they wake up and the nurses catch it, because that did happen with me once.
Wow. Huh.
Well, the nurse was asking me questions and I'm just looking at her like, what, can I wake
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's remarkable. What is being found right now, and I think a lot of it has to do with the advancements of medicine, which I think is prolonging that incubation period between life and death, because with all these advancements, I think that's helping to extend that. And the more validation that people have, that this is something real. I mean, I don't think I would have gone public with my NDE if I didn't know what it was.
Okay.
I mean, the fact that it had a terminology to it, the fact that other people had it was when I really first started getting public with it. I picked up a book that was gifted to me called Embraced by the Light by Betty 80, and that was the first time I've ever heard of the term near death experience,
Wow.
or someone who had it. And I think it gave universality to it and just allowed me like, whoa, there's a term for this. Other people have it. And
Right.
so
Hmm.
I think a lot of people hold on to things when they feel very isolated, but once they see that other people have what they have, they're called to action and they're able to identify it. And that's very cathartic in a way.
Well, I agree, and I think it would depend on the support of those around you.
Mm,
Like you found
sure.
you didn't have a terminology for it. Obviously, you're 3 years old, but as you got older, something substantial happened to you. How did your family, react? Like you came back, and did you just kind of go blah blah, or did they have any inkling? Because obviously
Yeah.
you were this like old soul in this like old man in this little boy's body sort of
Right.
thing with the
Hmm.
wisdom and everything else.
I I really kept it close to my heart, but like I said before, my dad was the only one who I really told, and I said, something profound happened, like one day it's going to make sense to you, but one day, but right now it will not, because I just really didn't have the
Right.
language to describe what I had.
Yeah.
Um, but I was forever changed. I mean, I just remembered, and I speak about in Life After Breath, my first book, where having this NDE, my intuition was insane, where I was just, having this interdimensional communication with loved ones and stuff like that.
Right. Right.
And I just remember turning to a classmate, and I'd be like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? The classmate just looked at me like I'm someone from Mars, and I was just like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm
Cuckoo for
better off.
Cocoa
I'm
Puffs.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just better off holding on
Right.
to this privately
Right.
rather than talking about it, because I just knew that the world around me doesn't understand this, and it was like frustrating and very
Right.
isolating. But then I was fortunate enough to come out to when a world was ready for this, and a world was really bought into this stuff, when I
Right.
was ready. So I think timing is everything, and it
Yeah.
wasn't time for me in my life to get public with it as a kid.
Mhm.
Timing is everything. I mean, now I think we live in a day and age where, like you say, even medicine and even science
Mhm,
has basically started studying it.
mhm,
You know, science is very curious about what the essence does upon death, and they're studying it. I just saw some ridiculous article today. It says, What does death look like?" They've bottled death, and it looks like this really beautiful blue light. And I'm just like, I should bottle that. This is like, it's like, this is an article. It's like, but people send me all kinds of things, but what it tells me, as far off the cuff as it may be,
mm.
is that there's interest and that somebody out there is poking and prodding and at least trying.
Yeah, and it's getting things rolling. But I think it's important that it's hard to say what comes first, the chicken or the egg,
Right,
but how we view the afterlife or God, I
right.
think, will inform the lives that we live, and how we live oftentimes informs how we view the afterlife and God and our life experiences. So the two are very related. So if you view life as a place that's condemning or cruel, and that's your experiences, it will be very hard to have a viewpoint of God as unconditional. But I think if you have these experiences, with God as someone who's far beyond an abusive parent or principal or
Yeah.
policeman of authority, and just, this unconditional love beyond maybe our experiences here, that can inform the lives that we live. I mean, it's so
Hmm.
interrelated, I think.
Right,
I have a
right.
theory on the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
The chicken had to come with the rooster or we wouldn't have any more chickens. Like, let's get real
Yeah,
here.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's true.
Sorry. But
So, no, go ahead.
no,
Yes, it
no.
is. Okay. Well, as we're slowly nearing the top of the hour, what would you like to add to this evening's discussion?
What would I like to add? Well,
Yeah.
regarding to the rooster, I did grow up with roosters in my backyard, and they would wake me up, but I needed to be awakened, you know?
Right. Right.
And it crowed 3 times, and I didn't doubt. Yeah,
We
yeah.
could do pop culture and silly references for hours.
Well, that was a Jesus reference with the rooster crowing 3 times. Yeah, something like that. But,
Yeah.
uh,
I
That's
always
a
say
yeah.
I'm
whole other
comic
show.
relief.
It was interesting because I grew up in suburban Long Island where no one had these things, but my dad, grew up, he lived like by a farm for part of his life, so he wanted to bring that in. But I guess we just agitated the neighbors, and they told us to just kind of get them out. But for years, I was the chicken kid, I was the farmer kid. That was me.
Right.
But
See, Tamara says divine intervention of the egg. I don't believe it.
yeah, but
It's a rooster and a chicken. It's like Adam and Eve.
yeah,
So,
but
okay. So, what do you have coming up? Let's go there next. What do you have coming up? Do you have any events? Do you have
yeah,
any?
I'm going to be in Lilydale
I
August
love
8th.
Lilydale.
Yeah, where no one dies. So I'm going to be in
No,
Lilydale.
it's where we all
Uh,
go to rejuvenate. People
If
who
you
work
see
yep.
in
the Fox
light.
sisters, say hello from us.
That's
Very
right.
nice.
That's right. Lilydale, I'm going to be doing a workshop there.
Ah,
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's going to be on August 8th. So I'm going to be doing a wonderful workshop in my NDE and different lessons, and signing
Love it.
books. And
Go find Jacob at Lilydale. Guys, it's an experience in itself. I
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
love Lilydale.
Lilydale is great.
Go,
It
oh,
books up
yeah, I
fast,
used to
so
go
get
all the
into it.
time. Love it.
Yeah.
It's really the center of spiritualism,
It
in
is.
the
It
US, and
is.
It's historic. What I love about it too is how progressive it is as well.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, they were, before all of these kind of social, progressive kind of changes and the very into women's rights and, stuff like that before, so they were very always ahead of the game in terms of social issues. And that's what I love too about them.
Yeah.
They weren't just about the mediumistic stuff. It seemed like they were very much about, moving the needle on social rights and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I'm
Oh,
all
they're
for that.
wonderful. They're
Um,
wonderful.
it's going to be in
Right.
Lilydale, and you have a couple different potential things lined up with like different producers about like potential shows. I can't get into the specifics of
No,
it,
of course. Yeah, yeah.
but that is something potentially on the horizon. I'm manifesting as well.
Nice.
Um,
Nice.
I'm trying to go out west to do some stuff too. So
Right.
a lot of things are happening. But yes, Lilydale is like something that I'm really excited about because I've never been there before.
Oh my
And
gosh, you have to go to the museum and see my friend Ron Nagy. Well, at
I'll
least
have to check that out.
he used to be, yeah, the curator there, but it's wonderful. Everybody there is just wonderful.
Hmm.
But
Oh,
he's very versed in all the history. And when you go into the museum and you start realizing, wait, Harry Houdini's been here. Wait, Abraham Lincoln
Abraham
and his
Lincoln.
wife
That's
used to
right.
come here.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
Harry Houdini used to go to try to debunk them all.
Oh, wow, wow, wow.
So, although the history is phenomenal. I mean, Ron has written things on slate writing and all the channeling and oh my God, go see all the old
Right.
photographs. Everything is phenomenal.
I mean,
Phenomenal.
and it just makes me so proud to be a New Yorker because we forget. I mean,
Yes.
that's right outside of Buffalo, and
Hey, it's the largest spiritual
yeah,
community on this side of the
everything's.
planet.
New York's a great place. I'm happy to live here, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's my big one, and potentially, I'm looking to try to do a podcast. So I'll definitely keep you posted. I'd love to have
Well,
you on.
we just
Uh,
happen to have a network and we just happen to be handing out spaces right now
I've
because we're
never had
expanding.
I've never had one and always wanted to. But
We
what
can
I
work with you.
yeah, we'll definitely have to chat. But what I do want to have a
Okay.
podcast on is something that really highlights mental health, spirituality as well, and my biggest passion, sports.
We
Sports is
can
my big one.
We
Oh
actually
boy.
are looking for someone to do a show on sports. You could probably get yourself a couple of different shows, especially during the day or early
Right.
prime time for your sports. You just
'Cause-
message me if you're really serious about it because we are
yeah,
fully expanding. We've just opened up a lot of our daytime slots as
Hmm.
well.
wow.
And you were 30-year-old network that is really well established, and we're FM as well.
We're the
Times
same
And
age. Yeah.
two.
maybe by the time you go to air, Rogers will have a decision on where he's going.
Dun,
Oh,
dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun.
My
I
dog has a jersey
uh,
with Rogers on. My daughter's a big Packers fan.
There we go.
oh, is that
She does PR. She's an agent for athletes.
wow,
So
wow.
yeah.
I'm a diehard Jet fan. Like that's as fragrances, the Jets, like running, those are like my three biggest things. But from day one, I've been a huge Jet fan, and I can't wait. And Aaron's into this stuff as well too.
Aaron, they're on first name basis.
Well,
That's what they
He's
make
very
fun of me when I do that.
see,
he's very much into this stuff, and his ex Danica Patrick is too. She has a big podcast as well, and she's very into this as well. So, you're
everything
finding
happens for a reason.
yeah, you're
Connections are
finding
made for a reason.
yeah. I think you're finding like a new form of athlete. I mean, I am very
She's going into a show.
I know. I just.
Save it for air, Jacob.
no. What I would say is, you'd be amazed at the amount of athletes that are into this stuff, though. Essentially,
Oh, it's true. It's
yeah.
true. Well, if you really want to go that route, and when you're ready, you let me know, and we'll see
Yeah.
what we can do for you. Be happy to do it.
You get
One
those
last
numbers
question.
up there, and I might be able to get my daughter to hook you up with players.
Well, AR-12 is my goal. Yeah, that's I want to meet Aaron. Yeah.
One
Oh,
last
yeah.
question, and then we'll start to sign off. Amelia, can you grab
Yeah,
it?
sorry I cut you off, Michelle. I'm so sorry. Chris asked, does Jacob work in a clinic setting?
Yes, I work private practice, but I also work in a psychiatric hospital as well too, full time. So I'm in the outpatient section of the psychiatric hospital. here in Long Island. So yeah, I work as a clinical social worker therapist, both privately, and through, psychiatric hospitals. So
Hmm.
you have a brain, you have a body. I'm really open to trying to
He's
help
your
you,
guy right
you
there.
know. Yeah,
Okay,
you know.
where can people find your books?
So people could find Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder on Amazon. And if they want signed copies, they could contact me through Gmail, and I do send
Let's get
US
that
signed
up
copies as
there.
well too. And
Yes.
my website is jacoblcooper.com. That's jacoblcooper.com. Contact me through there.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really glad we could finally connect. And of course, Michelle's a friend of mine. She goes, "Oh, look who I've got." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, just
Yeah,
do it because we keep playing email tag."
right, right, right,
And I know she'll set it up and make it happen on the spot. So, which is
right.
exactly what happened.
Spirit really just wanted this. I
Just-
thank her, but Spirit really wanted this out there. But I
yes.
couldn't thank you enough, Michelle and Amelia. Really, I'm just so grateful to be your guest, and really keep in
Oh,
Oh,
touch. And
thank
thank you
you.
for all you do. An honor to be here. Yeah.
Thank
thank
you. It's an
you.
honor to have you. And hopefully we'll be able to call you a fellow host on the
Yes,
network soon.
Wow.
yes. Or
Wow.
in another case, if you write another book, let us know. We can do this again.
I have to. I'm only 32 years old and I've got 2 books, so there has to be more.
Oh,
I can't I
there's going
can't
to be
stop.
more.
Yeah,
There's going to be
I
more.
can't stop. 5 to 10 is my minimum. Yeah,
Oh, well, there we go. So we've got lots of time,
yeah.
and we definitely have a lot of shows on the horizon. So thank
Amen.
you for joining us, and I'll be in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Good
You too.
night. Night. Well, we've come to the end, obviously, of a really fantastic segment. We're just batting 100 with like amazing segments lately. We're just awesome people who've been on, awesome people coming up, including us two awesome chicks here. And yeah, we'll get to that. So, anyway, big thank you to Jacob Cooper with all of his insight and his wisdom. He's just made this just such an amazing experience. And so many people in all of our chat rooms, because like I said, we do have 7 that condenses into one soundboard here. And it's been really nice to see all the comments and the interaction. So we thank everyone in chat who participate night after night that we're here. So big thank you to Folgers Coffee, who are, our faithful sponsors. We thank you. Love you lots. Big thank you to Justin Snicker, aka Dr. Snick, the Sonic Surgeon, for providing us with his music, his voice for our intro and our outro. Big thank you again to Steve McGinnis, who is the artist behind the incredible artwork that you see here as well. And Folgers commercials, you heard us talk about it tonight. We're still taking them. Guys, lots of fun. You send it, we'll upload it to the soundboard, we'll play it. It'll be there forever and ever. You can promote yourselves, but you have to include Folgers. That's the deal. It's got to be MP4. So we want the whole gambit. So next week, Wednesday night, okay, we're doing something a little bit different. Amelia and I are going to do a show on the paranormal in the news. And I'll tell you what, I just had a lot of people interacting with me and sending me things, and not pertaining just to me, of course, but I mean, there's lots of stuff going on right now with some things. So I'd like to just touch on that, and I'm sure Amelia will come up with a gambit of stuff as well, because we really love to interact with you all. So that's what it's going to be. And we look forward to getting into the meat and potatoes of everything with everybody in chat. Thursday night, we welcome the return of our dear friend Preston Dennett. Yes, Preston's coming back on the
I met
show. We
him
love
last
him
time. I
so much.
can't wait.
We do. We love him a lot. He's just
Yes.
awesome. And
He's family.
I started messages. Don't you have a new book out? Like, come on, give us something.
Or
on
just
this.
come on.
I know. So yeah. So he's going to be on, and I can tell you we're going to be closing the month off the week after that, also with 2 brand new amazing guests. So it's just going to go on and on and on. We are booking like way in, already into the summer months. I mean, heck, we've got people booked all year. So it happens quickly. So if you want to be on the show, or you want to recommend someone on the show, we do have certain guidelines, because we try to not do it, all the other shows do. We just try to make it very unique to everyone. So just drop us a line. Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend. Thank you for tuning in. And again, everybody in chat, you're bloody awesome. Thanks for kicking in and being so interactive. Thank you, Faye. I will get back to you, by the way. Just schedule, but I'm there. I've seen it. I'm on it. All right, guys. Thank you. Good night.